Good evening. How you guys doing today? Doing pretty good myself. Trying to endure this hot weather. We've had, it seems like about a week where it's been over 100 every day, which is kind of unusual for this area. We've been here since, well, we actually bought the house in 2011, but we didn't move into it until 2016. And those intervening 5 years, we just come over here and work on it, start customizing it, making it the way we wanted, doing some landscaping and getting the permits signed off. And Faye was still working on the Marine base at that time, and she wanted to continue working there so she could work long enough to get a retirement. So, like I say, we didn't move in here until actually, it was May of 2016, so we've been here 8 years? Yeah, I guess it's 8 years now. And in that 8 years, I don't remember a summer this consistently hot. We've had days in the past where it was 100 or a little bit over, but generally speaking, it'd be in the 90s. And of course, the really nice thing about this area is it cools about 30 degrees at night. So that really helps because we just open the windows at night. The cool air comes in, it cools the house off, and then in the morning we close everything up. And it's usually good till about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we've got a couple of those evaporative coolers, the kind they come from Australia, and they fit in your window. And they're really quite efficient. They're easy to work on. We've got a couple of those, and sometimes we have both of them going, but not all that frequently. Sometimes one is plenty. Usually they're on for maybe 4 hours, and that's enough. So that really helps out with the electric bill. So other than that, let's see what else is happening. On the political side, this is Saturday, so it seems like sometimes not much happens on Saturday except when somebody tries to assassinate the president, which was a week ago today, I guess. So I think I mentioned in my video yesterday that, I didn't watch Trump's acceptance speech at the convention. I figured I'll just, watch the lowlights on one of the channels that I watch is basically what I did, what I gleaned from what I saw, because they had video snippets of it. The first 10 minutes, he basically talked about his injury from the shooting. And apparently he had some of the equipment from the volunteer fireman who was shot there and died. I don't know if it's his backpack, his helmet, or whatever. So he goes over and he kisses it. I think that's a little bit strange. He does the same thing with the flag, It's kind of bizarre. And what I was kind of hoping he would do, and he may have done this because, like I say, I didn't really see the speech. I just saw parts of it. I hope that he took some time and he thanked those people at the hospital that took care of him when he showed up. Can you imagine you working there? It's a Saturday afternoon. It's got to be a small rural hospital, right? And all of a sudden you get the call. The president's been shot and they're on the way, bringing him to your place. So there's people on duty there in the emergency room. And I thought maybe he would actually bring some of those people on stage, like the doctor and the nurse. But I'm sure if he had given them that offer, they'd have said, no, we're not going to be utilized like that, trotted out like cattle or something. But at the very least, and I hope he did this, because like I say, I wasn't watching, I hope he at least mentioned them and said a thank you to the hospital and the people who took care of him. I would be surprised if he did. My understanding is basically all he did was talk about himself during this 1.5-hour speech. It's the longest acceptance speech in the history of conventions, as long as we've been keeping track of that. And my understanding is there were people in the audience who were getting a little bit antsy, looking at their watches. Let's see. I don't know what time that speech started. I would think it probably started, local time in Milwaukee It would be 2 hours later than us. So I'm guessing it might have been like 11 o'clock at night, Milwaukee time, because they would want him to come on. Yeah, well, maybe he came on about 8 o'clock. So it's 8 o'clock our time. It's 10 o'clock back there. So that would be 11:30 by the time he got done. Those people, man, they're not used to being up that late. So I'm guessing they're ready to head to their motel rooms sooner than when he got done. But this is very typical. I've never been to one of his rallies, but I hear the same thing, that they've shown videotape. People just leaving, after about an hour. And of course, he's late. A lot of times he's an hour, 2 hours late. And a lot of those people have been waiting like for days so they can get right up front and see the cult leader close up. So I guess after his first 10 minutes talking about his injury, he became his old self again, complaining about all the ways that he's been taken advantage of, and all of his grievances, and how people are going to pay. That guy, I mean to tell you, he's got to be one of the luckiest people ever. Born with a silver shovel in his mouth. His dad leaves him like $500 million, which he proceeds to burn through. Somehow he weasels more money. All the lawsuits that he's had against him, all the divorces that he's had. And the guy just eats junk food like a freaking teenager, man. And the guy's just, it's like nothing will stop him. He's like Godzilla. Incredible. So there was that. And then, of course, the latest on Joe is that, no, he's still adamant about staying in. And I'm thinking, you know what it's going to take? And this, when I was pushing for Admiral William McRaven, I sent him a letter. Never heard back from him. Sent him a letter asking him, saying, hey, man, would you consider stepping up and being available to run for president? And so in that letter, I mentioned to him that Biden, we think, me and 10 other people that I had that were willing to sign the letter, said that Biden would probably step aside. And this was long before the debate. This was probably 3 or 4 months before the debate. I composed this letter, sent it to McRaven. I said, if we could get the Obamas, and we could get the Clintons, and we could get Nancy Pelosi, and we could get Chuck Schumer, and we could get Hakeem Jeffries to go to the White House, maybe we could talk him into leaving. This is before all the bad juju went down. Well, apparently Nancy Pelosi has kind of let him know, and Chuck Schumer has let him know. Hakeem Jeffries has kind of been on the fence. I hear a dog barking. There's neighbors got some dogs over there, but they're not coming this way. I got my dogs right here with me. My dogs are watching them. So he's gotten the word, and I think I mentioned yesterday that there were now like 35 Congress people have come out, asked him to discontinue his candidacy, and 4 or 5 senators now. But I wish, like the Obamas and the Clintons, would come out publicly. I guess they let him know. I don't know if it's a couple of days ago or whatever, but if he doesn't respond to that, I'm hoping that they have some kind of a deadline in their head where they're saying, well, he's not going to do it. We're going to have to come out publicly, say what we feel about this, because things do not look good right now. Not just for him, but there's a lot of Democrats that are running for the Senate and Congress, and they're in dicey districts where they could be beaten with him on the ticket. So I'm hoping, I keep saying, within a day or so. The days just keep ticking away. I think we're down to about, let's see, the Democrat convention, which is what Fox News wants me to call it. The Democrat convention is held, I think it's August the 18th, so it's about a month away. And then the election is about 107 days. So we got to get with the program here pretty quick. because there will be, guess when we get to the convention, if he's still on the ticket and the delegates vote for him, it's locked in then, because then the ballots get printed up and there'll be no turning back. So that's what's going on in that neighborhood. And I thought maybe tonight, one of the reasons I'm doing these walk and talks is because I wanted to do my autobiography, and I don't know if I'm going to get around to writing it. It just seems like I'm so busy doing other stuff. So I thought maybe I could record some of these things about my life for my descendants, if they're interested, like my grandkids. As I've said before, I really don't know much about my parents or my grandparents. My parents never really talked much about their childhoods, going through the Depression and all that kind of stuff. So this is a way I can kind of document some things. And I thought maybe tonight I'd talk a little bit about how I got into the financial position I'm in right now, which is a very good financial position from what I started with, and all of the good fortune that I had along the way that put me here, because I'm no financial wizard. It's all just, in my case, a matter of luck and being in the right place at the right time. So, of course, my first job was working for my dad. My dad had a little burger place, and actually, that's not my first job. My first job was selling copies of the Sunday LA Times, door to door. I had a little wagon. There was a guy in the neighborhood, and on Sundays you'd go over there to his house, and he had a stack of LA Times newspapers. I guess they dropped them off there to him for distribution. And he'd give me a load up of them in my wagon, and I'd go out and just knock on doors, door to door, go up with a copy of the Times. Would you like to buy the Times? I think it was 25 cents. And I mean, that newspaper was thick back in those days. So that was my first job. And then after that, I graduated to going to work with my dad. My dad had a little burger place, and he'd take me to work on Sunday mornings with him. And I think he paid me like $1. I was like 12 years old. And get to work, and 8 o'clock in the morning, we'd show up there, and I'd go out, sweep up the parking lot, empty the trash cans, come in, make sure the restrooms were clean, and roll up the pennies in the paper roller sleeves that you put the pennies in. I did that, and then gradually I learned how to make ice cream cones and how to cook burgers and hot dogs and wait on people and learn how to make change. So I did that I worked for my dad for probably a couple of years till I was 15, and by then we had moved to Tustin. And the first job that I had in Tustin, I worked at a car wash in the summertime. There was a car wash there. It was on 17th Street. It's probably not there anymore. But I worked there for the summer, and I didn't make very much. It was maybe $1.50 an hour. That's one of the toughest jobs I've ever had. Back in those days, cars were big, and man, they had huge windows, huge back windows, and you had to crawl in these cars, get inside of them, and it's hot. And of course, the car's all closed up because it just went through the car wash. Sometimes you'd have to get in there when it's going through the car wash. You get in there with a towel and squirt bottle, and you got to be a monkey to get in there and clean those windows. So I did that for summer, saved all my money, put it in the bank. And the next summer, I would have been 16. I'm guessing I worked for my dad that summer. He had another burger place in Anaheim, and that's where I eventually met the fabulous Fabian. So I worked there and saved up my money. And eventually, when I was 17, I was starting my senior year in high school. I had saved enough money to buy my first car, which was a Volkswagen Bug, a 1960 VW Bug that my dad had bought brand new. And he sold it to me for $1,000. And so I paid him cash, and then I had enough to pay for my car insurance, which I think was about $300, and enough money left over to pay most of my gas, although I did work on weekends, and I worked during the holidays to make a little extra money, so I'd have some spending money and some gas money. So that was my kind of beginning. And then when I got out of high school, I was 18. I went to work for a paint company, a small paint company in Anaheim, not Anaheim, excuse me, in Long Beach. I think it was on Anaheim Boulevard. It's called Ernie Cap. I think it was pronounced Cap. It may have been pronounced Nap. Paint company, spelled K-N-A-P-P. I was 18 years old, and I was the delivery driver. They had a little Chevy pickup truck, and painters would call them out on a job. Hey, bring us out. We need 5 gallons of exterior, da-da-da. Okay. Jump in the truck, take it out to them, and then the rest of the time I worked in the store, stocking the shelves and waiting on people. I did that for about a year. And I was still living at home at that time. We had moved back to Long Beach, and I was living in the house in Long Beach. And then when I left there, I was 19. I came back over to Orange County, and I kicked around some burger places, working in burger places, cooking, fry cook, that kind of stuff. And I did that for a while, and then I got my draft notice and went up to the induction center in LA the first time. They gave me a physical, and they gave me the written test, and 6 months later, I get another notice to report for induction. Well, it's like about a month from the time I get the letter to when I'm supposed to report. So I go to our family doctor. I've got a hernia. I've got what's called an inguinal hernia, which is where part of your intestine squeezes down into your scrotum. There's a little hole there in your abdominal wall where the vas deferens, which is the tube that comes from your testicle, goes through the abdominal wall, and it comes up, and I don't know if it attaches to the prostate, but somewhere it attaches in that area for the seminal fluid to flow through there. So anyways, I've got an inguinal hernia. So I go to the doctor, and this is our family doctor, and the guy's just an unbelievable jerk. He says to me, I tell him I need a letter because I've got this hernia. And he says to me, this isn't going to keep you out of the service. He's like pissed off at me. I don't know, maybe the guy was a veteran of World War II or something like that, and he was all gung-ho for the war in Vietnam. Well, I'll tell you what, I was not looking forward to going to Vietnam. What was happening there was just awful. I mean, we were losing 100 guys a day there. And for what? That's when the protests really started, was in 1965. And so my induction date was 2 days before Christmas, 1965. And so I'm dropped off downtown Long Beach where the bus is. I'm taken up to the induction center in LA. And before they induct you, they do one last physical on you to see if there have been any changes since the last time you were up there. So they come to me, and I give this guy the letter, and he says, okay, come with me. So he takes me into another room. I drop my drawers, and he checks me out and says, yep, you got a hernia. We can't take you like that. So I walk out of the induction center in downtown LA. Looks like I'm walking. I don't remember how it was that I got back home, but people were shocked when I showed up because they'd given me a farewell party, and all this stuff. And so I'm like, now I've got to reintegrate into the culture again. So I went to work back for my dad then. I'm trying to think if I worked for him. There was a period of time there when I actually sold vacuum cleaners, Kirby vacuum cleaners. Maybe it was then. I can't remember if I went right to work for my dad after I got out of that. That would have been 65. I'd have been 20 years old. So maybe I went right to work for him at that time. So I go to work for him, and then of course I'm there a couple months, and they hire the Fabulous Fabian. Fabulous Fabian and I fall in love with each other, and we get married, and we live in Fullerton, a little apartment there. I go to work for a catering truck company. I worked for them for a while, and then I worked for some friends of mine that owned a dairy. I drove a delivery truck for them. They had institutional accounts like schools. I'd go to work like at midnight, and go to these public schools. They're closed, and I got all the keys to get in the cafeteria and stock all the refrigerators with milk, cottage cheese, and whatever it was that they needed. That job went on for, I think it was only about 3 months, and that was a good job. There were two guys that owned that truck and that route, and after about 3 months, they just weren't making enough money to have me hired. They had to go back doing it themselves. So I lost that job. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I did after that before we moved north. If there was, I'll probably think of it later. Anyways, I think we had maybe $1,000 in our pocket when we left Fullerton and headed north. We had the Volkswagen car that was paid for, and we had been up to this area, and we had made arrangements to rent a little house there, like $85 a month for this house. It's right on the American River, right where the gold miners worked. So we moved up there, and there was a restaurant there, and we opened that restaurant up. It had been closed for a while, but all the equipment was there. So we opened that up, and that was probably around March. It would have been around 1970. And we had the restaurant open for probably 6 months, basically through the summer. And at the end of summer, there just wasn't any traffic. It was on old Highway 49, just down the street from the gold rush site where gold was discovered. And back in those days, we're talking 1970, there just wasn't the tourism that there is now. You could go there now, probably any time of the year, there's traffic there, because California has just gotten so many more people, and it's so much easier for them to get around than they used to. So we were there for probably 6 months, and then when we left there, we moved up to an abandoned house up in a little town out in the country called Kelsey, which was maybe 15, 20 minutes northeast of Coloma up in the mountains. We found a house there that was abandoned. We found the people who owned it. They lived in Sacramento. We went and met them. We asked them if we could move in there and clean it up. And they were so kind. And they said, yeah, you guys go ahead and do that. We'd rather have somebody living in there than having it abandoned, because it'll just get wrecked. So we moved in there, and we stayed there about a year until my unemployment ran out, $60 a week. So then we moved to Joshua Tree. That's where Fabulous Fabian's parents had built a retirement home, and they were too young to retire. So they said, why don't you kids go live in that house that we built? It's a brand new house, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house with a garage, 2.5 acres up against the rocks in Joshua Tree. It's an incredible place. My daughter sent me a real estate listing of that house recently, and they were asking $1,200,000 for it, something like that. And my in-laws built it themselves. They did they did hire some work out, but they didn't have all that much money into it. But Joshua Tree just went crazy, and that is going to play a part in my explanation of how we got into the financial position we're in. And I see we're 23 minutes in, so I think that's probably enough for tonight. I'll try to pick up on that either tonight or some video in the future, because I really haven't gotten to the part where things really worked out for us financially that allow me to be in this incredible place and go on these walks, just me and my dogs, no other people, no other houses, nobody bothers me. It's just, people in the city just dream of this kind of a thing. I've got a beautiful home. I've got my own well. I have a beautiful garden. It's just, my wife and I are just so comfortable there. We were sitting out in the backyard last night in the evening, just sitting there, just amazed at the improvements that we made in the place and how fortunate we are to have it, to live there. So anyways, that's going to do it for tonight. And I'll give you more info on that tomorrow night. Tomorrow night will be Sunday night. I don't know if there'll be an announcement by Biden then. Usually that takes place during the week. I wish he'd made the announcement when Trump was giving his acceptance speech. Wouldn't that have been funny? Like halfway through the speech. We have to break away. We have breaking news at the White House. That would have been terrific. Okay, so thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.